obsessed over every car I detailed because I was always so fearful. I was like having anxiety.
This is the foundation of the future of RUPES.
Long before Todd Helme could be seen showing off RUPES at the SEMA show,
The one, the only Todd Helme. Look at this guy.
Todd was a detailer who obsessed over paint perfection.
I've had 4 cars that won Best in Class at Pebble Beach.
I did a number of cars that won Pebble Beach and the Riddler Award. Doing high-end cars to the highest level is so stressful. These guys expected me to make my cars perfect. There were a few guys that hated me because they were jealous.
When I first met you, I didn't like you that much, Todd. Like, I was like, this guy is a cocky, arrogant.
I probably did have a little bit of an ego at some point because I was detailing mostly the nicest cars. Around 2009 or 10, I burned out on detailing.
Burnout isn't the end of Todd's story, because what happened next involved a yet unknown Italian company named RUPES.
RUPES was still new to the US, so it was a lot of hype behind it. I was the first employee in the US. Actually, some of my friends said it was stupid. And I said, shit, all right, let's bet on myself. And that was it.
Todd Helme, my first question is paint correction a science or an art?
Or an art? Oh, that's a good question. And that's one I haven't really thought about in a very long time. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have given you a better answer. The physicality of it is a science. It is literally, we can figure it out on paper and know what the results are going to be. So it's an engineering science. It's not that difficult to make predictions and base outcomes on inputs. However, the application of the science itself is an art form. And this is why you can have 2 people with, well, I can even break that down further, right? Because listen, in paint correction, A equals B equals C. Everything happens for a reason. There is no magic. If this paint didn't work with this polish, there's a physical reason why that was. It's not always easy to dissect that reason, but you can have 2 people who are, let's say, applying products similarly, and get different outcomes. So, and a lot of that is, it's passion driven, or even if they start off at the same level, even if you start off at the same level, if you're more passionate, you're always going to be refining and honing your technique. You're always going to be moving forward. So I think the application of the science itself is an art form. I don't think that there's some magical thing you're doing. In fact, I would say I know there's no magical thing you're doing. But the passion and the drive you put behind it kind of makes it personal, and then it's kind of hard to call something that's personal just science, right? It kind of devalues it. So I would, that's my long-winded answer. It's both and neither.
The reason I bring that up is because we first met at a RUPES advanced paint correction wet sanding class. I think I'd been polishing paint for like a month. I'd been polishing paint for a month, and I went to the advanced class.
Yeah, you had no idea what was going on. But.
And you all made fun of me. I think you called me Bernie. That was my nickname, because I had burned paint like the week before. Anyway, you're the senior technical specialist at RUPES. I don't even know what that means, but I remember that you and Jason Rose, we can talk about that, but you and Jason Rose were teaching this class, and I remember you asked people, like, why did you show up to this class? And is it to achieve more cut? Is it to get better finish? And I was the only person who was like, I just want to be able to cut more. And everyone else there was like, I want to refine my finish, which I think tells you where I was at, as far as experience goes. But I remember you saying something about this is more of a science than an art. And it like offended my sensibilities. And I just wonder, if you'd change your mind on that, or if just to the general public, if you have any more insights on that.
No, I don't think the two are necessarily diametrically opposed. When I was a detailer, though, which I was for a number of years, working on very high-end cars.
You're not a detailer anymore?
You should see my truck, man. It's disgusting. But I was a full-time. No, I have. I wouldn't even say 2 clients. I have 2 part-time clients that every once in a while I'll do something for. But no, if you would have asked me in 2008, I would have told you it was an art form. In fact, the name of my company was Bella Macchina, which is Italian for beautiful machine, and it was called The Art of Detailing. but I always looked at that. The art is like, it's like this, right? Cooking's a science. I'm sorry, but cooking is a science. You know how long a certain piece of meat cooks at what temperature to create what effect. And that effect is consistent. If I put this thick steak at this temperature on this grill, you will get the same result every time. However, if you ask a chef if cooking was a science or an art form, they tell you it's an art form, and they're not wrong, because it's not necessarily the steps, which are scientific, but it's how you blend it together that's the art form. And any great chef would tell you that making a grand meal is an art form. And I think that's kind of hard to argue against. But what they're doing is applying certain scientific principles in the way that, I don't know, feels or works best for them. So anytime you're allowed to personalize something, there is some level of art involved.
Well, I would agree with you there 100%. And I do want to talk about a little bit of your story back in 2008. You know, so far on the Nick at Night podcast, I'm talking to some older heads in the game, you know, some OGs, some people who've been doing this for a minute, which I like. I want to talk to people I like. And we
I'll tell you a funny story. Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Because you told me your first podcast was Jose Fernandez. Did he tell you the story of us?
No, not at all.
All right. So Joe, I hope Joe doesn't get mad at me for this one. So about 2009, Joe lives in California. I live in Orlando. We had known each other via McGuire's projects and whatever back in the day. And he reaches out to me. I mean, I considered him a friendly person. I don't know if, friends, but at the time.
McGuire's back in the day, too, what did that represent in the industry? I think people know McGuire's, the compounds, the polishes, but I don't think McGuire's is the same name today as it was in that time. So can you give me a context of, like, McGuire's projects? Was that a bigger deal? Was it a more...
Well, I don't know if it was a bigger, like, in terms of volume, it was a bigger deal. Well, in traffic, but I don't know if their slice is bigger or smaller now than it is, but the pizza itself was a lot smaller. So now you have so many good brands with so many good products. In 2007-8, you had a few brands with good products. And so their percentage impact in the industry was larger than it is now, for sure. But now, that argument can be made across the entire industry. RUPES came out with random orbital polishers in 2013. Well, 2011, the end of 2011 was the SEMA debut in the US, and now every company has one, right? So the point is the pizza continuously grows. So even if your slice stays the same, it takes up less ground. But back then, McGuire's was one of very few big players in the industry, and a lot of the McGuire's people who use McGuire's, the detailers, we all knew each other. Derek Bemis, Kevin Brown, Jose, me. I was primarily a McGuire's guy at one point, and in my detailing career, and. So anyways, Joe calls me. He goes, "Hey, man, I need a favor." So, okay. He said, "Where do you live in Orlando?" I tell him. He goes, "Holy shit. You're like 5 miles from this property I bought." I said, "Okay, well, what can I do?" And apparently, like during the housing market collapse, he had a rental agency that was supposed to rent out a townhome he owned. And he's like, "Bro, can you go change the lock for me? Because they're renting it out at like 1/3 my mortgage rate or something." I don't remember the specifics. I don't want to give away too much of his business, of course. I mean, this is a long time ago. But anyways, long story short, I changed the locks for him. And I met this locksmith, and the dude's like, "Hey, man, I think somebody's living here. Are we allowed to do this?" I don't know. He's like, "All right, you camp out on the corner, and if any cars come, you tell me." And it was like some Mission Impossible stuff, changing the locks for Joe. And then Joe was like, "Man, I will never forget that." So I think what we did wasn't right. I don't know. But it was Joe's property, and he wanted the locks changed, and we changed it. So long time ago. But
that sounds like a good story.
Yeah, there's more details, but as I think about the story, I think it's better to leave some out.
Okay. Well, if folks haven't seen the Joe Fernandez podcast, I'll put that link in the description below.
Yeah, great guy.
I want to talk about the forum days, because I think what's lost on the new generation of detailers is everyone's learning on YouTube. Like my company, DIY Detail, we've been very successful at educating through YouTube. But there was a time when Todd Helme was an up-and-comer and then kind of a star on the forums. And I'll use those words because I feel like I've done a little research. But can you kind of bring me back to those days? If like folks don't know who Todd Helme is, can you give me a little bit of your story and like kind of your come up before RUPES?
Yeah. It's funny because I don't ever think about those days. Like they're just such not a part of my life that the other day my friend sent me a link of a actual write-up we did out of the clear blue, and my buddy David. And I was looking at it, I was like, man, I had forgotten so many things that we did and the effort we put in. But okay, so hitting rewind, I'll start at the beginning, but then I'll get to the forums pretty quick. One of the questions I always get is, like, how did I get into detailing? And the truth is, it was with my father. He collected muscle cars and had a Corvette and a couple things. And we used to hang out in the garage and polish wheels with Mother's Magnum aluminum polish. And he would teach me lessons on life, or we'd wax one of his cars for a car show and he'd let me take it around the block and do a burnout or something. So that was a very early genesis. And then one of my best friends in high school, his brother owned a car dealership and a body shop, and we used to buff the cars using 3M pink filling glaze and a lamb's wool pad, a Schlegel lamb's wool pad. So I have no idea what those cars actually look like, but anybody who's driving around the greater Chicagoland area and sees a mid-'80s Buick with some holograms, they probably were from me.
There you go.
See, an art form, an artist leaves his mark. And then fast forward, I go to college. While I'm in college, to get beer money, I thought, well, I could detail a couple cars. And that's kind of what started it. So I detailed a couple cars. I had a couple cool customers. I graduate school, I get a real job. And, back then in 2004, coming out of school, you made about $28,000 a year, and which wasn't a lot. And I had a son coming. And so I thought I could make more money detailing, and started detailing more and more cars. Had these crazy ideas.
Were you full-time now, or what was your full-time job?
No. So at the time I had a full-time job working for a hospital company called Advent Health. It used to be called Florida Hospital. And I did logistics and transportation. That was like it wasn't a 9 to 5. I actually worked 2 16-hour shifts on weekends. And that way at the time, my wife could be home with I could be home with the kid during the week, and then she could be home with him on the weekends. It was a real stressful time. And then I actually was a valet too. So I was doing valet, full-time job. And we were trying to, her more than I had a lot of, she also graduated. She's a school teacher, but she had a lot of college debt. And we just figured, okay, we better work our butts off now when we're young and get out of it. And so I just started detailing on the side again. And my brother offered to build me a website. So yeah, okay. Wanted to put a Ferrari on it. Didn't know anybody with Ferraris. Went on this old forum called Ferrari Chat. I'm sure it's still around. Said, hey, if somebody has a Ferrari, I'll detail it for free. I can use your pictures on my website.
Oh, you said that?
Yeah. This is 2005, maybe.
Do you think that's still a good strategy? Is to be like, I'll detail your car for free? No.
But
it got your start, though. We all give it away, and then we say, don't do it. And it's like, but that's what got you.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, it works, right? I got lucky because there was a guy who used to use product line called Zano, and he had just quit. And all these guys in South Florida, about a 3-hour drive, all wanted this on their car. And I just happened to stumble into it. So this guy said, yeah, you can come detail my car. And I showed up. I drove 2 hours to go detail his Ferrari. When I took out the polisher, he couldn't believe I was going to polish it, because back then nobody polished those cars. Like this idea of paint correction on exotic cars, which now is so normal, was non-existent in 2005 or 6, about 2005. So anyways, I ended up detailing his car. He's blown away. He couldn't, I was showing him 50/50s and before and afters. And I had there were a couple guys. One guy was Mike Phillips, who was really big with McGuire's at the time and kind of a popular guy. I had reached out to him, and he had helped me, and I liked the way he used to do his write-ups. And there was another guy, and I can't remember his name, but he used to do these these before and after shots on a forum. So I set up my camera and did everything like they did it. And by the time I got home, I had like 13 or 14 voice messages from Ferrari owners that all wanted me to do their car the same way.
After you posted something, or after you?
No. After I did his car and I had a 2-hour drive home, I'm just driving home, and he's telling all his buddies about it, and they're all like competing to see who can get me to come back down to South Florida first. And
so it was just doing the job well that one time got you all that word of mouth.
Yeah, but so you asked if it's a good strategy or not. I guess I should rephrase that. I don't know if it's a good strategy or not. I imagine now it's more difficult because there's so much more competition. It was easy. There were like 3 detailers in Orlando, and I knew them. It's funny, and none of us hated each other. One of them is a guy named Brian Guy, who's still around. He was called AO Wheels at the time. Like, we all knew each other or of each other. There was no like drama, and there was a lot. There just was nobody doing paint correction on these super exotic cars. It just wasn't happening, and I just stumbled. Not globally, just in Florida, but like I just stumbled on it.
But you're doing it like, were you afraid to do it? What qualified you to do? Because they were still expensive then, and you're a kid, so you could have had a ton of liability if you messed up. How did you get the courage to do it?
That's a good question. So I would say ignorance. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, and I didn't realize all the liabilities that first trip. Now, when I got back and I had 17 people, I'll answer the question around, because I know that's not exactly what you're asking, but when I realized I had 17 clients lined up and I could actually make some money at this, I went and got insurance. I did my research, got insurance, and I thought, okay, that would help. But then I became very obsessive because I knew that I just stumbled into an opportunity. And I would even say that my obsessiveness then has led to my career now, because I never in my life, two lessons here. Never in my life did I think I would be given such an opportunity. Didn't, right? So the lesson I learned there is not everybody gets one, but when you get it, you got to jump all in. But then lesson 2 is you got to create your own opportunity. And I did that without knowing it. And that's what really happens. A lot of times we create our own opportunities without even knowing that we're creating them. So I didn't know that it was a great idea. Just like when I left Auto Geek to go work for RUPES, I didn't know that was a wise choice. I was the first employee in the US. Like, that was actually, some of my friends said it was stupid. And they probably technically were right. But I just thought, man, you got to take the chance. So anyways, I started detailing these cars. And
first of all, you detailed you polished a Ferrari without insurance. Like your first
I had like some type of insurance policy, but it probably wouldn't have. I don't remember what it was at the time. I did have some insurance because I was detailing cars.
Okay.
But I don't remember what it was, and it was a little different back then. It wasn't like shopkeepers or something. But it definitely wasn't the liability. Like, I didn't even think about it. Like, I just went down there and did it, and it wasn't like I did it really aggressive because I just wanted pictures for the website. I really didn't think this was the path. I thought the path was getting pictures and then using this newfangled internet to promote myself. So after I get all these phone calls, I start reaching out to everybody in the industry. Mike Phillips was one of the guys that I talk to more now, and at the time, and because he was really considered like one of the, again, everybody had a larger slice of the smaller pie, so he was one of the few guys. And Jose Fernandez had actually just polished an old Bugatti on the Maguire's for him, so I reached out to him, and he was so helpful. So I started asking all the right questions to the right people, and then I reached out to chemical companies, and I figured I better educate myself on every aspect of this. I took a photography class, bought a Nikon to take pictures. I read car magazines to make sure I did these write-ups on the forums that some of them will get 150,000 views or more. And I wanted everything. At this point, I was so proud of what I was doing that I wanted every step of it to be the best. And I obsessed over it. And I obsessed over every car I detailed because I was always so fearful that I'd put all this work into it, and then some competitor of mine would find one thing wrong with it and take pictures. And so it became like a very stressful thing for about 3 or 4 years. And then a former employee of mine actually did try to tear it down. I don't want to go into that story too much, but he created rumors and there were a few guys that hated me because they were jealous. And
well, I will say, when I first met you, I didn't like you that much, Todd. Like, I was like, this guy is a cocky, arrogant asshole. I'm like, Who does he think he is? So you kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I feel differently now. But I remember one thing you coached us on is you were telling us about supercars, right? Because, we're at the RUPES, Bigfoot Academy, and Todd and Jason are teaching us how to wet sand and correct paint and everything. So it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of people in there who had big dreams. And one thing I remember you said is sometimes it does help to be a little bit arrogant or cocky, or maybe I use those words and you use different words, but that's how I perceived it, is like there is a little bravado when you're talking to these supercar owners that tends to actually work. I don't know do you remember saying that? Do you have any thoughts on how?
I don't agree with that framing particularly. What I believe I would have said is it pays to be confident. And confidence is a fine line, but confidence comes from experience and knowledge. So my process with that, and this is a life thing though, is I don't form an opinion until I've researched it. And therefore, if I get called out on any opinion I have, I feel comfortable that I can, and if I don't know, I don't know. And I don't, and if it's not important to me, I don't let it become a thing. But if there's something I'm going to have an opinion of, then I do a lot of research on any of it. It doesn't matter. Why is the sky blue or something? Or I don't know. Like, I could tell you why. It's useless information, but if I want to know something, I learn it, and then I base my opinion on the knowledge. And I think what a lot of people do is they base their knowledge on their opinions. Completely different subject. But anyway, so I know I can.
No. That's why I like talking to you, is because we can talk about anything, and it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I know I can come across as cocky. I know I can, and I've actually gotten a lot better at it. But I think you also caught me on a bad day because I genuinely love to help people.
My perception, having met you maybe 5 times, so what do I know about Todd Helme, is that through the seasons of your life, you have evolved.
Of course.
And so I think 2017, that's 7 years ago, that's a different Todd to me. I don't know.
I'm 100 times different than who I was then. Yeah. And, well, we should all be, right? And there was a reason in that, and I actually remember that class very specifically.
You do remember that class?
Yeah, of course. And I don't
Chris Mendoza?
Yes. And
nobody knows who I'm talking about, but he's a character. Anyway.
There were certain reasons in that class why I was a little bit short, and it wasn't to be I would never want to make somebody feel bad, but there were certain people that were less interested in learning in that class than let's say having a good time. And I feel like that's a waste of everybody's time. So that was probably why I came across a little bit. But anyways, yeah, I'm definitely a different person in 2017. I'll be a different person in 2030. And if I don't continue to analyze and find my own flaws and mistakes and work on them, then like, what's the point? I hope that I feel like I'm a good person because I make an effort to be a good person. And a lot of people don't, but man, we are all
veering. But if I didn't like you and I thought you were a jerk, I wouldn't ask you to be on the podcast. I've truly enjoyed our conversations about, whether free will is real or we're all pre-programmed. Like, we could talk about a lot of different things. I do want to. I don't know. I have an opinion on that one. But. The Reader's Digest version of your story, I think, is good. Yeah. People don't know what Reader's Digest is because apparently I'm old too. But
no, I know what it is. My dad was a big Reader's Digest guy. I used to sit in the bathroom and we had a whole. Okay, I'll kind of skip forward. So, long story short, I become really well known on the internet. The forum days, which you had mentioned, crazy times. But the thing is, again, large pieces of a small pie. There were forums like autopia.org and McGuire's Online were the two big ones at the time. Later, AutoGeek came along and became really big, but it was different. AutoGeeks was different. AutoGeeks was consumer based. It was, I worked for AutoGeek or for Palm Beach Motoring Group for 3 years, and that was selling product. At the time, Autopia had no affiliation other than sponsors. And so it was a bunch of detailers getting together, trying to make each other better with a severe lack of knowledge and education.
Okay.
And what a different world we live in now. Detailers now don't realize how difficult it was back then to get some of the data and some of it. I mean, it's right at your fingertips. It doesn't mean that there still isn't a lot of bad information out there. Unfortunately, there still is. But the forum days were crazy. I I probably did have a little bit of an ego at some point because I was detailing mostly the nicest cars. I mean, there were other guys doing a great job too, and we were all friends. Most of the high-end guys, we were friends. I'm still friends with some of them to this day, but a lot of the other guys just became haters. So around 2009 or 10, I burned out on detailing. I really had done a lot. I became the official detailer for Bugatti for a number of years. I did a number of cars that won Pebble Beach and the Riddler Award. I had customers in different countries. It was just, again, I wasn't fantastic. I was just right place, right time. And I put a lot of effort in the little things. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, going to a photography class and taking photos that were really good. And then your customers would take those photos and they'd share them with their friends because they were so proud of their Ferrari in front of their mansion. And then their friends would call you and get their car done, right? So it's just, but doing high-end cars to the highest level is so stressful. Anytime you push past 90% of paint defects or push past removal or 90% of the surface area, you're getting into edge works, the edge work areas where there's more risk. The risk of catastrophic damage increases. And I was like having anxiety these guys expected me to make my cars perfect. That I did. They were paying me at the time really good money. This is pre-coding days to get the cars perfect. And I would sometimes not be able to sleep at night because I'm thinking, God, I hope I don't burn this one of 3 paint to sample GT3 RS tomorrow or whatever it was. So I knew I wanted to start transitioning out of detailing. And I also really admired Mike Phillips. And I thought he did a fantastic job of teaching people. He worked at McGuire's Online at the time still. So I get a call from a contact I have at Lake Country, and they said, hey, we are the owner of Lake Country is also the owner of this place called Proper Auto Care. I was familiar. If those who aren't, Proper Auto Care was actually the pre-Auto Geek. Auto Geek copied them originally. There's a whole history there between different brands that they both co-owned and stuff. But I went to work for Proper Auto Care through Lake Country. Built a forum for them, brought in new product lines, blew up the Blackfire name.
I remember Blackfire. Yeah.
That was, and then so the remnants of the financial crisis in 2008 kind of took hold, and Proper Auto Care struggled, and eventually they decided to close doors. And Auto Geek came to me, which I actually was kind of mortal enemies with Megan at Auto Geek, who is now I call her mom, and probably because I was cocky. And they invited me down. I went for a meeting. They hired me on a 3-year contract and went to work for Auto Geek. And Bob McKee, who's the owner of Auto Geek, stood by me because I went through a divorce. I was supposed to move down there. Auto Geek's about 2 hours. It was about 2 hours to the south of me. For about a year, I was going to live here and then come down once a week. I went through a divorce. I said, I can't move down there now because I'm not going to give up. I have 50-50 custody of my son. And Bob McKee said, well, I'm still going to let you finish out your contract. Just come down once a week and I'll get a hotel room if you need to stay to do extra work. And I always admired that about him, that he didn't, he had encouraged me to consider if I wanted to make that a career to move down there. But I felt like after my 3-year, and I was put in charge of the Autopia forum, which we blew up. They put me in charge of doing product development for Blackfire, me and Nick Rutter. So we were able to do some successful things, but I was getting very burned out on the commercial side of it. When you sell 100 Carnauba waxes and you got to figure out a way to tell everybody the best, it just kind of, there was nothing dishonest at working at Auto Geek, but it's a lot of showmanship. Right? Retail sales is a lot of sizzle selling and
well, that's what I asked you. I just started this company, DIY Detail, and I went up to you at the RUPES booth in 2021 and I said, do you have any advice? And you were like, sell the sizzle, not the steak. I'll never forget that. What did you mean by that, by the way? I think I internalized it and have a meaning for it, but what do you mean by that? Well, because I think anyone who's a detailer with their own business, because I think sales is in every sort of facet of life, whether it's I remember, was it a Grant Cardone, or there was a book about someone had this book about how sales is not just in business, everything is sales. So I don't know. I mean, sizzle, not steak. I don't know.
My old business partner or employee / business partner, he ran the Tampa side. He was the one that told me that, and it always stuck with me. But look, a steak's a steak. If every steakhouse just sells steak, then what's the competition? You're selling by the sizzle. It means the experience. You go into Ruth Chris, right, or something like that, and it's you have beautiful chairs and seating and ambiance and lighting. The steak is the steak. And yes, I understand there's different cuts and flavors and preparations of steak, and there are better and worse steaks. But you're really buying the experience more than the food. And so taking that to like consumer products, people buy messaging, people buy from companies they can relate to, people buy from people they like, people buy to be part of a group, right? There's 20 different reasons why people buy. People obviously buy based on performance, although it's not always the number one metric. So what I meant by that is, I didn't mean you shouldn't have a good steak, but just remember that when people buy from your company, they're buying a part of you, that they're buying what you deliver, right? It's not just the flavor of the steak, it's the sizzle. So that's what I meant by it.
Okay. Yeah, and I think in this marketplace, we mentioned that pie, everyone's got good products. I mean, you can't even survive if your products suck anymore, unless you're maybe this.
No, unless that's your.
But yeah. Really, most products out there are excellent these days, right? So I mean, you just gotta be just to be in the marketplace, or they're at least very good. So there's a lot of differentiators in terms of why people actually buy from you.
Yeah, and it's so easy to copy everybody now too, right? So it's even if you do something unique, it gets a little easier. But that's any industry anywhere. So.
Yep. Okay, so you're talking about how Bob McKee supports you through your divorce. Yep. You're at Auto Geek. Mm-hmm. I'm actually really interested in the story now. So, because I've gone through a divorce. Like, this sounds like a really tough time in your life. You're considering.
Well, it was coming up the other side. Like it was getting better. And then 2011, right? So my contract ended in June 2000. God, it would have been. My contract ended in June of 2014 with Auto Geek. So I was still detailing the side. I was still doing the Auto Geek thing. November of 2011, I still have the message saved. I get a message from Kevin Brown. He goes, "Hey, you should check out this Italian tool company. They have a booth over at SEMA. They're making random orbital polishers." And we used to take this Dynabrade attachment and put it on a rotary, and it had a 3/4 of an inch orbit. It was really unbalanced and real slow. And he said that they kind of built a tool around that concept. I'd never heard of RUPES. I thought it was pronounced RUPES. And I went over there with a bunch of other detailers. Todd Cooperwriter, I think, was there. I was working at Auto Geek, but I snuck out. They let me get out of the booth for a few minutes. And the original RUPES booth was the size of a table. And I picked up this polisher, and I thought, that's pretty cool. No idea at that time that this would be a big part of my life. And couldn't even have imagined, right? So fast forward, things are pretty good at Auto Geek. I had no complaints, but I felt like as I was nearing the conclusion of my contract, we accomplished a lot. But from a business perspective, I wouldn't have kept me as an employee.
Why?
Not that I didn't work hard or I didn't do everything I said I was going to do. I never missed a deadline. But, businesses are numbers. And here I am, I'm the only employee that doesn't work in the building full time, which sometimes even personnel, and nobody ever treated me poorly there. Like literally nobody ever treated me poorly there. But that can create jealousy, right? I never experienced that, but I'm just saying this is one of my thoughts. And then I thought, well, what we've done with Autopia and Blackfire, it's self-propelled now. So other than keeping my name, which had lost a little bit of weight in the industry because I purposely wanted to dial back. I didn't want to be about my name anymore as a detailer. What's the benefit of keeping me? And I just thought, no, there isn't. If I was a business owner, so I didn't know if my contract was even going to get offered to be renewed or not. And so I thought, you know what, at this point, I don't want to do it anyways. So I had a difficult meeting with Bob McKee and told him I didn't plan to re-sign a contract if it was offered, and June would be my termination. He asked me what I was going to do. At the time, I didn't have any backup plan. I literally didn't have a backup plan. didn't know about, I mean, I knew a little bit about RUPES, and I told him this in January. So I gave him a 3-month or 6-month notice because I just thought that was the right thing to do. And it also gave me 6 months to start planning. You know, I went to school, so I have some desirability in the work field or the workplace. And I thought, you know, maybe I could find it. Maybe I won't even be in detailing anymore. I didn't know. I just knew I needed a change. And the craziest freaking story, at the time, and Mike Phillips at AutoGeek, he taught a lot of the classes at Mobile Tech, and I wasn't really a good teacher. I mean, I had taught a couple classes, but I don't think I was very good. And they said, hey, you know, Mike's teaching all these flex classes, and he's really busy. We got this new line, RUPES, which I knew about because I wrote all the product descriptions, and I understood because of Kevin Brown how dual action random orbital polishers really worked.
So you had met them at SEMA. All of a sudden, slowly, they're starting to get picked up by distributors like AutoGeek. So AutoGeek
was a little bit late to the game, but yeah, I tried to bring it into AutoGeek right after I met them. November of 2011, I went right to management, and I said, hey, this brand is going to blow up. Trust me. I know the people that already are in love with it. And again, at the time, big pieces of small pies. The main influencers in the industry picked it up. I was with them when they were picking it up, and I'm like, they fell in love with it. Kevin Brown, Todd Cooperrider, there was a number of them. I think Chad Raskovich was there, if I remember. And these guys, again, back then, were really popular people. And I was like, once they start singing the praises of this tool, and what I was told at the time was, no, we sell a competing brand, and that's who we're loyal to, and that was it. So AutoGeek passed, and then about a year and a half later, it had gained so much traction in the US that, look, if you're a smart business person, you're going to sell. You know, so we brought it into, if I remember, Autopia, which was my baby. So they gave me the leeway to bring in products they wouldn't bring into AutoGeek, and because I was completely autonomous there, I had to get approvals, but I got approval to bring it in. I brought in the whole line. And then within like 3 days, they put it on the AutoGeek website. And so I was like, oh, okay. But that was the end of my involvement, right? Like that's so I thought. So fast forward to February 2014, they say, hey, Mike's too busy to teach a RUPES class. We want you to teach it. I said, okay. And I write all the PowerPoint material and do all of it and think, oh man, I'm all nervous. I practiced for like 3 days before, you know. And again, I had never spoken to anybody at RUPES, so I didn't even know if what I was about to teach was technically correct or on brand. I just knew what I knew about polishing and tried to understand what I thought they were trying to do. That was it. And the minutes before my class starts, I walk in, it was on a Sunday. Marco Dinka, one of the guys at RUPES, says, hey, you know, I don't speak English very well, but we're actually, your class is at 9:00 at RUPES, and you're in room 103A or whatever. I'm in 103B, and we're teaching a 9:00 class on RUPES. And I thought, well, that's kind of stupid. And nobody's going to come to my class because would you rather go to AutoGeek or would you rather go to RUPES, right? Like you want to get it from the horse's mouth. So I was like, oh man, I put all this energy into this class, and then I was a little deflated. I was expecting about 4 people in my classroom. So Marco says, hey, you know, since this weird, you know, irony has occurred, how about we just combine classes? I said, yeah. He said, okay, I'm going to tell everybody to come in here. Next thing I know, it's standing room. I mean, there's like 250 people in this room, right? Because RUPES was still new to the US, so it was a lot of hype behind it. And I go, okay, Marco, well, how do you want to do this? He goes, well, I don't really speak English, so why don't you teach it? And I go, okay, shit. I got to teach this class with the main guy, the godfather of Marco's, the godfather of the Bigfoot polishers. And if I'm technically or wrong or I don't, anyways, I ended up teaching the class. And afterwards, he's like, holy crap. He's like, you teach RUPES better than anybody at RUPES. He's like, you understand exactly what we're doing with this company. You know, he's like, you're the most technical guy I've ever talked to, or one of them. And that was it. I said, oh, I was so like, you know, it was such a nice thing to hear. Go down. We had a show we used to do called Detail Fest in April. I only got 2 months left at RUPES. They had hired a guy named Chip Case.
You had 2 months left at AutoGeek. Yeah.
Yep, 2 months left at AutoGeek. Go down there, do that. And, Chip says, hey, I heard you're leaving Auto Geek. I said, yeah, I'm leaving in about a month and a half or whatever, 2 months. So, well, I'm going to be up in Orlando. Why don't we go grab something to eat and have a conversation? I said, oh, okay. I think I know what's going on here. We went out to eat Smoky Bones, I think, or something by the airport. And he laid it out to me and said, look, this is what RUPES is planning. At the time, we had a 3PL warehouse in New Jersey. There was no U.S. anything other than Chip, who had just kind of walked into this role, who used to be the international sales manager at Dynabrade and knew a lot of the RUPES guys because of that. They had no technical support. They had no customer service, no salesperson, right? So they basically, Chip's like, look, I've done all of these things, and if you join RUPES, I'm gonna teach you how to do all of them. And I said, shit. All right, let's bet on myself. I can learn that. And so I went to work for Chip. That's the way I looked at it, and RUPES. But initially, Chip Case, probably the most intelligent man I've ever met in my entire life, and the most patient. So, especially with me. So I went to work for RUPES. Had no idea that it was a great choice. We didn't have anything here. My first SEMA, I learned that we had just purchased Cyclo in Colorado. The next year, we get Jason Rose, my buddy, still one of my best friends, Alberto, and then Dylan Von Kleist came on, who used to work for Adams, who was a guy I used to know. He was another one of the guys from the old forum days. And I thought, man, we're starting to build a pretty powerful team here.
Because Jason Rose was like a huge name from McGuire's, and looking back at the success of Adams, it was before my time, but I look at Dylan, I'm like, that wasn't an accident, right? Like you and Dylan, you guys can really talk about the technicalities of things and sell products very well. And I don't say those are the same thing, and I don't say selling is a bad term at all. But like if I ask for a technical question, like you and Dylan know a lot of very specific things. Because a lot of people in detail, especially like Ivan is my business partner, like people want to hear the exact explanation in a very technical way. They want that kind of answer. And you guys are both very gifted at that. So I'm just looking back, like you, Jason, and Dylan, it's a powerful trifecta of like detailing minds and personalities.
I think that's how we all kind of felt, and actually Jason Rose, I was in Milan at the factory when Jason was at McGuire's, and he inquired about coming to work for RUPES. And because I was over there, not because we were great friends. I had known Jason for a little while because I actually was on his outside consulting team when he was developing microfiber pads for McGuire's, and I was testing products for him. That's how I knew him, through Kevin Brown. But he had called me and said, hey, what do you think about this company, RUPES? And I said, it's a good company, blah, blah, blah. And then but that was it. And, and he's like, hey, please keep this on the DL. And of course, and then, which I just didn't. And then he, when I was in Milan, they said, hey, what do you think about Jason Rose coming to work for RUPES? And I thought, are you serious? Like, that guy wants to come work with us, and what a free agent pickup, right? Like and same thing with Dylan. I know Dylan. I had known Dylan for a while, and actually, so the current RUPES building that you were at, if you're standing in front of it, looking at the RUPES building, the building immediately to the left, it's not even a stone's throw because they're not that much distance, was the Adams building. That was Adams HQ for. Now, they weren't at the same time. I think RUPES literally opened in 2017, and Adams moved out like a week later. They had already obviously been in the process of moving out, but it's just funny how that works. So Dylan's workplace literally moved one address number over,
Yeah.
But yeah, Dylan was I didn't realize how talented he was. I mean, I knew he was a smart guy, but man, we had our first sales meeting, and I thought, holy shit, this guy. And I'll tell you one thing about Dylan. That guy can multitask like nobody I've ever met. Really just a driven, incredibly smart, good guy. Somebody I still call a friend to this day. I mean, really just as everybody that's worked at RUPES, we really cultivated a good culture and grew the company several thousands of percents in sales. And
I mean, now RUPES is such a behemoth in the industry. Your booth at SEMA is gargantuan. Your influence, you have multiple warehouses now in the States?
Yeah, we have two factories. Two factories, one in Houston that manufactures polishing pads. And from what I've been told, We have the most sophisticated polishing pad manufacturing, period. It's not even close. We're the only company who makes polishing pads on 2 different continents. We are, all of our polishes are currently made in Italy, but we do have plans to start making some of them here. And then we have the big factory in Denver, where the tools are either manufactured, but most often assembled, which just means they have parts from Europe, but they're put together here. So you can't say they're manufactured, but they're assembled in the US, like by American workers who it's kind of a big deal. As far as I know, we're one of the only tool manufacturers that are actually making stuff stateside, and we're invested into growing that. Like that's been an investment. Now, you had mentioned something, and I want to clarify it too, right? So I know that we have the impression of being this huge company, or
that's
we have
what I was gonna say. Is like when you're that big, like I wanna know the band when they're playing the small clubs, and I can see the sweat on their face, and then when they get so big, they're playing arenas. It's like, oh, they're out of touch, right? Like that's my impression of RUPES. You guys are so big now. You got your fancy polos on and your nice like SEMA booth. Like I wanna feel the human side of this company. I want to know more about the soul.
Do you feel like we've lost touch with that?
I just feel like you're a big company. Just like I haven't been to your training since 2017. I'm not a working detailer anymore, so I can't speak to that. But I know you're so big that you're the behemoth now, you know?
So that's always the paradox, right? We're not big. I don't know how many employees we have in the US, but we're not a big company. A big company would be 3M or Meguiar's or Milwaukee or any of the tool manufacturers that have 100 SKUs in Home Depot or something. RUPES in the US is maybe 30 or 40 employees, maybe, and that's factory workers. There's maybe 12 of us out in the field between technical and sales and management. We're small. We are a small company. Globally, a couple hundred employees. I mean, we have a big factory, but that's a global footprint. So in terms of like people, we're not big. Anybody that works for you would tell you that our culture, we don't have a big company culture. We all joke around. We all hang out. We're all friends. We are a little bit like colloquial, right? Like we all consider, like we're really like passionate about who we are. But I think we also hire a huge, diverse group of people. I would say most of my best friends work for RUPES or have worked for RUPES. And I mean, outside of my group of friends that I ride motorcycles with. So we're not a big company, but I can understand your perspective. That's why I asked you that. Right.
Well, and I don't know if I'm the best person to ask, but it's interesting looking from the outside in. You look at Jason Rose as the kind of the elder statesman, but not old at all. Just like, he's kind of he's old. He's the global trainer, right? I don't know what his official title is, but you were there first, and I didn't realize that. And one little like slice that I'd like to bring to people was like at training when I think you guys were developing, was it Uno? It would have been something with protection and a polish. Which one were you developing back then?
2017. Yeah. I think it would have been just coming out with Uno Protect. We probably were developing Uno Advanced, probably.
Okay. So, but I remember it was fresh paint, and you and Jason were on this fresh paint trying to finish it down, and Jason was like, I don't think we should polish anymore. And I was like, surely he'll listen to Jason. And Todd's like, no, I got this. I'm going to, and you like, you was a little bit of this where you were like, let's push it a little bit further. And it was kind of like, oh, these guys are more like, on the same level than here's Jason and here's this young guy. I didn't know any of the dynamics. So it was kind of interesting to see some of your personality.
Well, I don't know if we're on the same level.
But you believed in your ability to polish paint and in what you saw in that moment, and you stood up for yourself. And I was like, that was kind of cool. That's all. Yeah. Yeah.
From a technical standpoint, I don't think Jason would tell you he's more technical than me. And I certainly wouldn't claim that I'm more. I mean, we don't always see eye to eye on certain things, but we respect each other, I think, at equal levels. And it's very hard to respect somebody more than I respect Jason Rose. But we come to each other for advice. Now, I will tell you this, in terms of knowledge base. So in my very narrow focus, I'm knowledgeable. in terms of like wide base, like talking about like how to remove a tannin stain from fabric or that dude just is an encyclopedia. He's so impressive in his world. But him and I also, you know, I think because I detailed more recently than him, it's sometimes you can become a little laboratory in a little less real world. And your products, we can all make them work in a laboratory. This is not a knock on Jason at all, because Jason is so good at product development and he's much better at it than I am. And then delegating and creating structured tests and independent variables. And so Jason, that's really, a lot of people don't really see the magic of Jason Rose. But he's fantastic at those things. And if you can imagine, when they asked me if I thought we should hire Jason Rose, I knew that in some ways we'd be stepping on each other's toes because we both have a very similar skill set. But I thought, man, that would be messed up to try to not get somebody hired because they would be in competition with me. Competition, right? But so I thought that's the wrong way.
Look at these sports teams. You know, they win championships, and sometimes there's like there's big personalities behind that. But if you can respect each other, even if you don't always agree, like tell me one team that doesn't have some of that going on, and I think that's perfectly healthy, understandable, normal. Yeah. You know, it may look like a certain thing from the outside, but like Ivan and I, you know, have our different strengths, and Ivan would for sure be on the product development side and in the explaining, like truly on the detailing side, right? And I bring a passion for detailing and a broadcast journalism background, and so I'm passionate about making things interesting and relatable and packageable. And we want to help people, right? But I'm like, if nobody's watching, right, no one's going to see this. So,
you got to get out in front of people.
So there's been a healthy friction there. Yeah. And I don't even call it a friction, but, you know.
I don't know if, like, Jason and I report to the same person, so I don't think there's a hierarchy there. He's in charge of projects I work on, so he definitely is in charge of me there. And he delegates to me. And I'm grateful for it every day. I mean, if you can't learn from amazing people, then something's wrong with you. And I have some of the most amazing people in my company. I've always had, from Auto Geek forward, or actually from Proper Auto Care forward. I've just had amazing mentors, and that's where confidence comes from, which you perceive as cockiness.
No, I think I think the cocky side of you that I saw, you know, it seems like
maybe a bad day. Maybe a bad day.
What are we drinking there? Coke Zero?
Coke Zero cherry and water in my RUPES cup.
Okay.
Mostly water, but for some reason today I'm like dying for carbonation.
Senior technical special. All right. I kind of want to talk about RUPES. I kind of want to talk about your journey, but we're running out of time. Give me some lessons learned. Like, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Sure. Yeah. I've got to pick up my daughter in a few minutes. Unfortunately, I rambled on you, man. I know. We'll have to do it again sometime.
I know. I was like, man, this is not enough time. And
so much more to go into. Lessons learned. Good question. One, I would tell myself, good job for taking risks. Calculated risks. That was good. So that would be the praise I would give myself. The lessons I've learned along the way is I never did this, but I've seen it happen. And we all can be guilty of it to some level. I've never done it directly, but don't step on people on the way up. Never do that. Your success, if your success comes as the byproduct of somebody else's failure, then I think it eats at your soul, right? Like I know there's very successful people, and I know that there's a lot of like smart business people that do that. But for me, the most important lesson in life is nobody really knows what happens when you die. But I'll tell you what thing I don't want to think about on my deathbed. I don't want to think about regrets. And I've had that belief for a long time. Like, I think that's the worst thing. Imagine you're on this planet, on this day, now with the internet, and you can fly all over the world, and most of the population is educated and eats, and we're really in a great place globally, although I know things aren't perfect. and you make all these bad decisions and you're this miserable person and your time, this journey is coming to an end and all you can think about is your regrets, right? Because that's the way our brains are. So I would just tell myself earlier on, just don't make decisions you're going to regret. Don't, whatever they are, think about every decision you make, research every decision you make and make good ones. And I feel like I've done that for the most part, but of course there's, and the ones that you don't make, we'll say the bad decisions or the surprises or whatever they are, make the best of them because it's all perspective. If you get lemons, make lemonade. So
what's your biggest regret?
In life or in work? Open-ended? Oh, man. In life, my biggest regret, man, it's deep, but I'll tell you. 2013, my brother passed away from a drug overdose for opioids. He was part of that pain pill clinic opioid crisis that we had. And I didn't realize fully at the time that addiction is a disease. And relapse is very high and you have to be patient and you have to understand that part of the process of this disease, just like if someone doesn't have a leg, you don't expect them to run. There's certain behaviors and I wasn't very tolerant of those behaviors. And I don't know if I would have changed his outcome. Who knows the voyage he was on, but I wish I would have had the knowledge and patience back then that I had now, because I think at least I would have made a much better impact and given him a better opportunity. So I think that's probably my biggest regret in life. It doesn't keep me up at night, but I think about him and I just think, man, if I let him down, I'm not, I did the best I could back then, but I you can always do better. So
you think you would have approached it like with a little bit more of a heart? I hate to use that word, but I just,
no.
There was, I think you're a very driven guy and I just feel like you're a more seasoned, I hate to use the word soft. I don't mean that in the wrong way. I mean, like, I just feel like some of your edges have softened a little bit in the time I've known you, which comes from maturing. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm putting it wrong.
I'm having a daughter at 40, which that was a decision that wasn't planned. There you go. But that was the best thing that's ever happened to me. That, my son, of course. But yes, having a daughter, and especially being older and financially stable and not having some of the pressures that you have when you're young, starting your career, trying to be in a relationship or a marriage, trying to do that's a lot of stress. And it's hard to even remember who you are. It's like you're so-and-so's spouse, you're so-and-so's dad. Who the hell are you? And now I'm just in a much more mature place. And I also know because my son is 20, serving in the military over in Hawaii, kicking ass. And I miss him every day. Like we talk at least every other day. And I'm like, man, I hope he comes home. And I just realized that this journey of life, even though sometimes it feels like you're struggling day to day, it does come to an end. These great things, I know you have younger children and I'm sure it's difficult, right? But embrace it. Embrace the suck, because one day you're going to wish you had it. I promise you that, man. So even with my daughter now, when things are tough and I'm single dad, I have 50-50 custody of her also, but while I'm balancing this and doing this and I'm like, holy shit, and it's so easy to get stressed out. I just stop myself and I become very good at this. And I go, dude, there's going to be a time when this little girl doesn't need you. And that's devastating. And it doesn't seem like it in the moment because you just want that peace. But there's a time when that peace is just not worth it. So maybe another life lesson. I didn't regret with my son. I was really there for him. But it's just something, my daughter benefits from those lessons now.
I think cherishing time with your kids, as much as it's a cliche, is like,
be present.
I don't know. We're talking to a lot of detailers out there who, those cars aren't going to clean themselves. You're not going to advertise the business without working really hard. The social media content is a full-time job for me. So imagine this is your side hustle and you're trying to create content around it and you're trying to be present for your partner and you're trying to be a good dad. Like there's just not enough time in the day to do it all well. It's a good reminder of what kind of matters,
Yeah, keep those things in perspective. You don't get time. Time's the one resource you can never buy more of, right? And the thing with time is once it passes, it doesn't come back. So And it's easy to be there and not be present. Be there, but your mind is somewhere else, or you're on your phone or whatever. Honestly, fuck that. Get right, put your phone down. I watched this great podcast with this guy named DJ Shipley, who is this SEAL Team 6 guy, and he was talking about that. He's like, you got to shift between gears. And you go from, I'm at work, I'm a work. When I'm at home, I'm a dad. That's my job, period. And other things can suffer because that's the most important thing. So stay present and stay in the moment. And, you know, there's not one person I know that doesn't regret giving up those opportunities, you know, and I don't know anybody who hasn't given up those opportunities that isn't grateful for it. So I would say that's
giving up those opportunities.
Well, like, you have an option to go to your kid's recital or go to work. And then I've never met anybody that chose work and was happy about it. But everybody I know that chose work hypothetically was pissed about it. They thought they made the wrong choice.
It may not be apparent right away. It is time, right?
I promise you, if you choose your kids, no matter how hard it is, you'll never regret it. Or your family or your friends. It doesn't have to just be kids. It's not kid-centric, right? Now everybody has kids, and you don't need kids to be complete. But choose people over things. Things are nice. I like things. I like people a hell of a lot more, and I would never trade a person for a thing. And my younger self would have, by the way.
Really?
Probably. I don't know. But now, no. Relationships and love is like, I lost my best friend last July, and I've grown really close with his wife and their kids and his sister, and they're my family. And this is one of my best friends in the whole world, if not my best friend. And, which is a horrible situation, but it just made me also realize just how important it is to be there for people and how good it feels. Like, right? Like when you do good things for people, it's just you can even do it for selfish reasons. But anyways, man, I got to go.
You got to go.
Your daughter and pick her up. I'm rambling. We could probably do this for another 2 hours. I don't know if anybody would want to listen, but
yeah, I have no idea, but hey, it's Nick at night. And, so there's no way you actually picking up your daughter in the morning because it's nighttime. No, it is what it is. Hey man, it was really great chatting with you. If folks want to see Todd on again, comment down below.
Yeah, let me know. I enjoy it. I'll talk too much. So
we should talk about something that isn't detailing, just about life.
Next time we'll just talk about life. That's more interesting to me anyways.
Different seasons of life, but it's a detailing kind of centered podcast with a lot of other thoughts. Anyway, we're both rambling. Todd, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Man, it was really great, and so grateful that I met you, that we've had some really good conversations, and that I would definitely consider you a friend, and I'm so happy for your success, sincerely.
Hey, back at you, man. Thank you.
Cool, brother. We'll talk to you later, man. Be good.
Hey, man.